Hey guys, it's FreightWaves Now. It's Tuesday, December 4th, and I've been doing a little bit of eavesdropping with my walk around today, and was listening in on Zach Strickland, who you know as one of our market experts, and we're joined here in the Silicon Valley of freight here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, by Dean Croak, who leads our market expert team, and they were talking about what they were seeing in the truckload industry for some of the new indices that we've recently been working with and looking at inside of our Sonar product. So I'm going to let these guys talk about it, but some of the performance that we've seen in the truckload community right now is pretty remarkable and pretty dramatic from a historic perspective. So let me turn and ask Zach a quick question. As you look at the operating ratio here in this index, Zach, normally a negative number followed by brackets or parentheses and a minus sign is not a good thing. Understanding operating ratio as I do, I'm going to let you explain why that is actually a good thing for the truckload market.
No, the operating ratio, the lower the value, the better. Because what that is telling you 88% currently in October, 88% of the total revenue is straight operating cost. So those are things like maintenance and truck costs and all these things that go into running a trucking company. One of the remarkable things that we're seeing this year is that this number, if you can see, we're all the way back out to 2014, is as low as it's been in recent history. And honestly, I don't ever remember hearing about a big group of trucking carriers having an 88 OR consistently. So October, some of our data told us that this was actually kind of a declining month. So seeing these numbers at the end of October means that the trucking companies are able to remain profitable through kind of a declining period. Some of that
declining period of like activity volume and the like,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So volume and stuff is kind of like slowed down here in the last month or so.
So best practices historically, as you can see, would have been an individual carrier being in the 80s from an operating ratio perspective, but now you're seeing this entire community. And how many carriers are within that community?
There's hundreds.
Hundreds? Okay.
Yeah, there's hundreds of carriers in that community. So the best practice is actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke. This is a smaller community, because these are the people that have decided that they're going to come together and kind of standardize how they report things. I mean, you have generally accepted accounting principles, but these are going to take it a step further and make sure that they're very consistent on how they're reporting these numbers. So the reason we were talking about this was actually because we were seeing reports of used truck prices continuing to go up, indicating that there's still increased demand for equipment. And in a slowing kind of economy, slowing trucking sector, they're still spending money out there. And me and Dean were talking about this. And Dean, I'm going to have Dean come out here and talk to you about what he's seen in this used truck sector.
Now, I'm going to jump in real quick. Dean has some credibility that none of the rest of us have. Dean actually continues to carry his commercial driver's license. You're going to notice that by his accent, he's going to sound smarter than most of us because of his Australian background, but he carries his CDL here. He owns a 2003 Peterbilt, right, right, Dean? That's named the Grumpy Pete. And so if you're catching Dean at the wrong time in the afternoon, you might get a little bit of Grumpy Pete yourself. So Dean, talk about what we're looking at here and the impact on used truck prices.
Thanks, George. So what we've got here in our used truck index is a bit of a snapshot of the 3, 4 and 5-year-old trucks. And what's interesting here is if you went back further to 2009, you'd see a massive drop in truck prices. I bought my Peterbilt for $35,000 back in 2009. That same truck today is running for about $70,000. So if you look at the 3-year-old trucks here, you can see the average price is up around $69,200. It's up 20% since January this year. The 4-year-old trucks are up around $55,000 in October. They're up about 12% since the start of the year. And the older trucks at the 5-year mark are around $43,000, and they're up about 10% over the year. Generally speaking, in the used truck market, the average truck's running at about 68 months and about 455,000 miles. Last month, the used truck community said there was a shortage of trucks, which is kind of interesting. It's showing there's still demand for used truck in the market. The retail sector had another strong month, so the new truck orders are still fairly robust. The delivery rate is fairly stable, but what we think is going to happen over time is that as the new orders start to come out of the manufacturers as a result of the record number of Class 8 orders this year, what will eventually happen in the Q1 next year, there'll be an influx of vehicles onto the second-hand market, which will force used truck prices down as fleets start to improve their trade cycles and flip those vehicles. So that's where we saw used truck prices kind of dropped a little bit in September, but they've come back up again. So generally speaking, things look pretty robust in the used truck market. It's a pretty good indicator that the trucking community feels fairly robust about the outlook.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the reasons we're seeing this too, this extended cycle, is because you saw the ORs were so big. There's a lot of cash available to kind of turn over. Coming out of 2016, you had people extending their life cycles of their trucks a little bit longer because they didn't have as good of an operating ratio. They didn't have as much money to invest in their fleets. 2017, 2018, great years for trucks. 2018 specifically, the ORs have been tremendous. So it's keeping these prices kind of elevated for a period of time. And obviously the tax breaks didn't hurt. And going into the fourth quarter, things tend to slow down quite a bit. So we're kind of expecting that to continue, but we probably won't see it for another month or so.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who runs out in Montana, and he's normally hauling cattle, but as winter hits, they kind of swap between different modes. He's been pulling doubles for an LTL carrier, and he bought a new Freightliner for the purposes of running this freight. And he told me last night he's getting 8 miles to the gallon pulling Rocky Mountain doubles on this LTL freight, which is phenomenal, which is another reason that the newer trucks are holding their value much higher, because they have better technology. They're actually, some of them are reporting into the mid-8s, high 9s in terms of MPG, which is phenomenal when you think about the impact on the operating ratios that you just explained. The thing about this time of the year, it's a really different time of the year because we've got the retail season, we've got holidays, we've got increased demand for trucks, but we've got drivers thinking about getting home. So the impact of holidays really disrupts a lot of the freight markets this time of the year. And as drivers they think about a couple of things. One is, how can I make more money and run more miles to pay for some of the bills that I've got that are kind of unseasonal, and buy some of the Christmas presents I'd like to buy, anecdotally. And the other thing is they're trying to figure out how they get home, and fleets have a really big challenge trying to get drivers home each year. And what we see is that as you get closer to Christmas and drivers are booking in their home time, the number of empty miles start to increase, because at some point in that week leading up to Christmas, fleets have to make a decision about whether they hold the driver over or they deadhead the driver home to his domiciled address. And what we see here in the truckload indexes data is each year at the end of the year, there's about a 2% jump in deadhead miles that occur between the start of December and the end of December. So it's another indication that this time of the year is fairly different. Drivers are always thinking about a couple of things. Getting home, being with family, but also making enough money to provide for everyone. The other challenge for drivers is the miles are much harder. They're not like miles in summer. They're much harder because of the conditions, the weather, the traffic, the road surface changes. They've got to use chains in different altitudes. They've got to contend with ice in northern latitudes. So it becomes a very different equation for them. The miles are generally much more difficult to come by. The other thing, though, that's different is with more darkness comes better quality sleep. So drivers actually sleep better when it's darker, so they don't have to worry about the ambient light keeping them awake. So unlike summer, when most accidents occur, accidents are fewest in winter because people are doing less non-work stuff during their off hours, so they've actually got more time to sleep. The downside of more dark and less sleep is seasonal affective disorders like depression. So a lot of drivers experience depressions throughout the winter months because they've got less sunlight. So if you're thinking truck drivers are a little bit grumpier during the Christmas period, there's a reason why. It affects all of us. You know, I get a little bit grumpy too when I'm sleep deprived, but that's just fairly normal.
All right, we're gonna finish it there, and I want to thank the Grumpy Pete for participating today. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Zach. We'll see you at FreightWaves Now. Be well. Thanks.